We are in If My People Bible reading, Book of Exodus. This is part number 60. We're going to be starting in chapter 3, 1. And a few things have, I pass this on to others to read, and even before I go to the creating this for the YouTube, I get some questions, and they come back to me, and so I want to kind of answer them before we even get going here while it's on my mind. Um, we have an Exodus right from the start. It mentions about Moses having a wife, and he gets his wife from Raul, and he says this is the priest Raul, and then shortly after that, it seems to be a controversy, which of the dozens of times that I've been asked this questions on all kinds of questions on controversies in the Bible, I can answer them usually by reading the entire Word. That's the reason we want you to read this Bible from beginning to end, because it answers every single controversial question. So on this controversial one, it says, it seems like, is this guy's name Raul? Yoel, however it's said, or it also mentions Jethro. Well, now Jethro is an Egyptian word, Hebrew Egyptian word. It's meaning like a high position. So, okay, and then someone says, yeah, but I've heard more than that, Bruce. Later on in Numbers 10:29, and when you get there, you'll see it. It mentions Hobab. So Moses is saying his father-in-law or his priest is Hobab. Well, okay, which one is it? Is it Raul, Jethro, Hobab? According to what we've been reading now, it's hard to tell. But it's not, because when we get to Hobab later on in the Numbers, you start looking at the history and traditions that people have in those days and in these days. So in those days, just as Noah called Canaan his son, it was a grandson. There was no such word as grand in those days. So 10 generations later, the son is the son, but there's a grand in front of everything. So here we have Moses calling Raul, who was a Kenite, by the way, a Kenite, or Canaanite, Kenite, which is another word for Canaanite, pagan worshiper. And Moses called Raul and then respected him by calling him Jethro, which is another thing is saying Your Highness or something like that today, or Sir, or Lord Balfar, or something like that. Okay? And then when we get to the book of Numbers, you take a look at the time frame there, because Hobab followed through the tribe, and you're thinking, okay, well, of course he did. It was Jethro, and he was the father-in-law. It was Moses's. It was his father-in-law. So it was through his wife. Of course he did. You got to keep looking. The Bible wants you to dig, and we get a lot of critical comments, people attacking me and others, and we don't know what we're talking about, and we don't go to all kinds of other biblical things to find out the answer. We simply look into the Word, and you keep looking at the Word, and what you find out is that Raul, most probably, because, why would he call him a father-in-law or son-in-law? It's because it's true. Raul, or Jethro, Lord, had a son. And what happened to Raul or Jethro? Did he pass away? We don't know. But certainly you do not get to be the patriarch of the family when your dad's still alive. Okay? So Raul Jethro probably passed away during this 40 years in the desert. Okay? He's an older guy to begin with, and now it's 40 years later. So what do you think? And so who becomes his official, by law, by Torah, Hobab? Okay? I hope that answers that. The other question came up about the timeline, and I'll give you a timeline here. Here's the timeline. Moses is born. He is weaned out. He is in the Pharaoh's house. He is somewhat of a prince of Egypt, although he sticks to his Hebraic ways. And so we have 40 years of testing with him in Pharaoh's palace. And how does he do? Well, he fails the test. He decides to murder somebody. He takes a guy out and murders him. So he didn't pass the test. Whatever the test is, he didn't pass it. So he takes off. And he's gone. He goes to Saudi Arabia. And he lives in Midian with a bunch of Kenites, people that, by the way, the father told him not to marry into. So right off the bat, is he passing the test for the next 40 years? No, not on that test. Not on a number of things the Abba Father says not to do, not to intermarry with non-believers. Hello? Not to even go back and when you leave Mesopotamia, when you leave Iraq and you go through the Fertile Crescent to Egypt and then back to Canaan, you weren't supposed to drag your family with you. The father said not to do that. What is the results of that? Not good. What's the result of his father doing this and that? Not good. What is the results of his children having to marry into people that are still doing pagan ways? Not good. But does the father still work it out? Yeah. If people want this, they want that. The father says, okay, all right, there's consequences, and there are consequences. So there's another 40 years. Now he's 80. Now he spends 40 years in the wilderness as the leader of Israel. And how does he do? Well, some of the worst things he goes against and personally strikes the backside of Y'SHUA, or the face, the rock, the stick. And that's the reason he doesn't get to go into the promised land. Not that he killed somebody, not that he failed all kinds of other tests, not that he, lived with pagan type people and had to put up with it. So there's your entire book of Exodus for Moses until his death. But he's a righteous man. He loves the Lord. He hears and obeys. He makes deals. I don't want to be responsible. I don't want to be a speaker. I don't think I can do this. The Father tells you to do it, you do it. So what's the result of that? Well, the Father says, okay, Moses, I'm tired of hearing this nonsense. Your brother, your older brother, yeah, he can speak for you, and he can do some of the same miracles you're about to do. But later on, messing around with that and his sister, having to put up with the nonsense she does, leprosy and everything that's going to come as a result of them thinking they're just as equal or better than Moses. When Moses was called, they were not, neither one of them. It doesn't go well. They don't pass the test. He doesn't pass the test. Okay, what does that apply to today? What does that apply to today? Well, it applies to this. We're no different. We're no different. And we're certainly not better than Moses. I'm not even going to put myself anywhere on that level whatsoever. But look what the Father did for him. And look what the Father did for his sister. Look what the Father did for his brother Aaron. Moses' wife doesn't exactly, hear and obey him in certain aspects, and she gets in trouble. So That's where we are in Exodus. We're in chapter 3 on that one, chapter 4, chapter 5. Um, Moses, even in chapter 4, as we're reading along here, and I certainly hope that you are reading along, at a lodging place along the way, that's part, that's 424. Yahweh met him and was about to kill him. Uh, him meaning there had to have been some circumcision going on, and it wasn't taking place here. So even Moses' wife was smart enough to figure out, if I don't do exactly what's supposed to be done, because Moses is not doing it, I'm going to do it because my son. She had 2 boys, by the way, but one was a firstborn, and there was going to be some death. That's why it says him and not them. Remember, all firstborns, we're in Egypt, we're in Exodus, all firstborns belong to me. And so if Abba Father would send a death angel come down and destroy, I don't know how many firstborn animals, and the firstborn of the families of Egypt, and firstborns of the slaves, and firstborns of the servants, and all those who chose to be and do and hear and obey that of their bosses, they went down too. Okay? And the same thing would have happened to the children of Egypt if they didn't hear and obey, which was the blood. So what was the blood here to reproduce that? It was circumcision. That's what it was. So it's the same thing. So Zipporah, being a Midianite, did not have her son circumcised until then, but knew to do it at this time, meaning it was the covenant. The theme coming out of these verses is that the husband and the wife must be in one accord. If not, problems arise out of each having their own way against each other. Zipporah was sent back to her father and later returned to be recounseled with Moses. Marriage difficulties. Today, marriages are in serious trouble for many because of this same sin. They got to be in one accord. If they do it and continually do it and consistently do it, the results are fantastic. If they don't, they slip, they fall back, they have problems, they have to start over, and here we go again. So we have, now we're in chapter 7. It says, then Yahweh, this is chapter 7, verse 1, then Yahweh said to Moses, see, I have made you like Elohim to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. I will lay my hand on Egypt, now in verse 4, and mighty acts of judgment I will bring out of my divisions, my people, the Israelites. Because of Moses, because of the love Moses had for the people. He had a funny way of doing it, and the first one of killing someone else was not the way to start. But you know what? He remained who he was, and he was real. He was real to his end. He had an incredible life, and the way he ended it, he in the very end, hear and obey the Father, and that's what he did. And he was told how it was going to go for him, and what he wanted more than besides all the people, all his children of Egypt, to enter the promised land, was he would like to, and the answer was no. So the miracles that occurred in all of Exodus, and there were 10. There were 10 terrible things that happened, miracles like that were not good in Egypt. If you go back and look at the timeline, and one disaster after the other that Abba Father did against the Egyptians, hardening the Pharaoh's heart. That doesn't mean anything close to he actually hardened him. It just means he showed what was already there. And the other thing was that all those miracles, all those 10 plagues had something to do with the gods of Egypt. That's what that was. all about. See you at the next reading.